New video from the night of the murder, new body parts discovered, and today we also heard from Maxwell Anderson's family for the very first time. This all comes as Sade Robinson's family plans a public vigil to honor her.
I mean, I can't imagine what Sade's family is going through. Nobody will ever be able to understand that. You can't ever relate to that. But just knowing that this happened so close to home is such a hard thing.
On April 1st, 2024, Sade Robinson went on a first date with Maxwell Anderson in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Surveillance footage showed her entering Anderson's apartment that evening. She was never seen leaving. At 3:47 a.m. the next morning, emergency responders were called to a vehicle fire near Warnemont Park. The vehicle was identified as Sade Robinson's. She was reported missing. Later that same day, a severed leg was found along the Lake Michigan shoreline near the location of the car fire. DNA confirmed it belonged to Sade Robinson. Additional body parts were recovered over several days in multiple locations, including Waukegan, Illinois. A forensic investigation linked Anderson to the crime. His apartment contained blood evidence in the bathroom, kitchen, and car trunk. Authorities found photos on his phone showing Sade unconscious and later dismembered. His internet search history included terms related to body disposal and avoiding detection after murder. Anderson was arrested and charged with 4 crimes: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson. He pleaded not guilty. The trial lasted 8 days. Over 60 witnesses testified. The jury, composed of 9 women and 3 men, deliberated for less than 1 hour. On June 6, 2025, Anderson was found guilty on all charges. Sentencing is scheduled for August 1st, 2025. He faces mandatory life in prison under Wisconsin law. This case is not speculative. It is based on forensic evidence, confirmed digital data, and court testimony. The timeline from disappearance to conviction is clear. The facts are verifiable. This is the full story of every move, every brutal detail. If you're captivated by real crime stories that peel back the layers of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we uncover real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to the voiceless. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in.
The case of Sade Robinson not only captivated Milwaukee, but the nation. Behind the case was a detective who made this her only assignment, working to solve Robinson's murder from day one.
The lead detective is opening up to our Aaron Maben about this case. Their conversation begins where Robinson's leg washed ashore, Warnemont Park in Cudahy.
Sade Carlina Robinson was born on May 10, 2004, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At the time of her death, she was 19 years old. She lived in Milwaukee throughout her life and was well known in her local community. Sade was enrolled as a full-time student at Milwaukee Area Technical College. She was pursuing a degree in criminal justice. According to academic records and public sources, Sade had completed more than 1 semester of coursework and was actively engaged in her studies. Her academic interests focused on the U.S. justice system, legal procedures, and community safety. She was described as consistent with her attendance and punctual in her assignments. Her choice to study criminal justice was not accidental. Sade had expressed a strong interest in law enforcement and legal systems from an early age. People close to her said she was motivated to understand how justice works and wanted to be involved in improving public safety. There were indications that she was considering a career in corrections, law enforcement, or legal support services. There was no official record of any internship, but she reportedly inquired about volunteer opportunities and law-related job shadowing experiences through her college. Sade lived in a residential area of Milwaukee. She did not live in a dormitory, but commuted to classes. Her personal life appeared to be balanced between school, work, and social activities. She had no criminal history or known disciplinary record. Sade maintained social media accounts that reflected her personal interests, including fashion, hairstyling, and makeup trends. She often posted images and videos of herself trying different looks and styles, which showed a consistent interest in beauty and fashion. Outside of school, Sade participated in everyday social life. She had a known circle of friends and acquaintances. Reports confirm she frequented local restaurants and was active on social apps and platforms. She used dating apps to meet new people, which is how she eventually came into contact with Maxwell Anderson. The individual later found guilty of her murder. Multiple classmates and acquaintances stated that Sade had a friendly and outgoing personality. She was known to be talkative, approachable, and active in group settings. Her instructors at Milwaukee Area Technical College describe her as attentive in class and curious about legal topics. She was seen as someone who took her education seriously and was developing a clear path for her future. Sade was not employed full-time at the time of her death. However, she had worked part-time jobs to support herself and pay for personal expenses. According to available information, she held customer service or cashier positions at different points during her college years. These roles helped to maintain some financial independence while managing her academic workload. There is no indication that Sade had any ongoing conflict, threats, or personal issues prior to April 2024. Her communications with friends and relatives in the weeks leading up to her disappearance showed no unusual behavior. She maintained regular contact with her family, and she had plans for her upcoming birthday, which would have taken place on May 10th, 2024. Her connection to Maxwell Anderson began shortly before her death. They had reportedly exchanged messages and agreed to meet for the first time. On April 1st, 2024, 19-year-old Sade Robinson left her home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for a planned date with a man she had recently met. His name was Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old male also living in Milwaukee. The meeting had been discussed in advance, and both parties had been in communication through text messages and phone calls leading up to the evening. At 5 p.m., Sade finished work at the restaurant where she was employed. According to co-workers, she seemed normal and had informed some of them that she had plans later that evening. She changed out her work clothes and left the restaurant shortly after her shift ended. Her movements from that point forward were partly recorded through cell phone data, social media activity, and surveillance footage collected by investigators during the subsequent missing person investigation. Between 5:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., Sade reportedly stopped at her residence to freshen up before heading out. She was last seen by neighbors leaving her home alone and getting into her personal vehicle, a black 2020 Honda Civic. There was no sign of distress or indication that she was being followed. By 7 p.m., surveillance footage from a residential apartment complex located on South 5th Street in Milwaukee captured Sade's vehicle entering the parking area. That building was confirmed to be the residence of Maxwell Anderson. Additional footage from a doorbell camera and interior hallway camera captured Sade exiting her vehicle and walking toward the building entrance. She appeared to be alone and entered the main door using a code provided to her. Once inside the apartment complex, a time-stamped hallway camera recorded Sade approaching apartment unit 2B, which belonged to Anderson. At approximately 7:11 p.m., she knocked and was let in. That was the last visual confirmation of her alive. There is no further footage of her exiting the apartment or the building. The building's main security system automatically records every entry and exit. According to police analysis, no footage showed Sade leaving through any of the monitored doors for the rest of the evening or the next morning. All exits during that time period were cross-referenced with video logs and movement patterns. None of them matched Sade's description or appearance. Additionally, her phone was last pinged within the same vicinity around 7:30 p.m. before going offline permanently. Meanwhile, Maxwell Anderson's movements later that night were tracked through different forms of data. Around 10 p.m., Anderson left the building alone, according to another camera, carrying 2 large black garbage bags. He returned to the apartment about 20 minutes later. This behavior was logged but not flagged until Sade was reported missing the following day, and the footage was reviewed by detectives. On April 2nd, 2024, at 3:47 a.m., a fire was reported near Warnemont Park, located in Cudahy, a suburb just south of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Emergency responders, including the Cudahy Fire Department, were dispatched to the scene. When they arrived, they discovered a vehicle engulfed in flames near a remote wooded area. The fire had severely damaged the car. Once it was extinguished, investigators began an initial inspection of the vehicle. Although the vehicle was almost entirely destroyed, a license plate and portions of the vehicle identification number remained visible. Using this information, authorities confirmed that the burned car belonged to 19-year-old Sade Robinson. This vehicle identification was critical. At that point, Sade had not yet been officially reported missing, but her sudden lack of communication with family and friends began raising concern that same morning. By mid-morning on April 2nd, a missing person report was formally filed. Sade's family had been unable to contact her since she left for a date the evening before. She was not responding to calls or texts, and she had not returned home. The discovery of her burned vehicle now placed her in potential danger. Investigators considered the location, the time of the fire, and the destruction of the car to be suspicious. Warnemont Park is not a common area for abandoned or burned vehicles. The case was escalated. Law enforcement began reviewing local surveillance footage, canvassing the neighborhood, and tracking digital evidence, including phone records and social media activity. At this stage, there was still no sign of Sade Robinson herself. Later that same day, April 2nd, 2024, at approximately 3:15 p.m., a human leg was found along the Lake Michigan shoreline within the boundaries of Warnemont Park, not far from where the burned vehicle had been located earlier that morning. A man walking along the park trail discovered the severed limb and contacted authorities. Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office deputies arrived and cordoned off the area. Initial examination confirmed the leg was human and had likely been separated using sharp force. There were signs of intentional dismemberment, which led authorities to treat the case as a probable homicide investigation. The proximity of the leg to the burned vehicle, both in location and timeline, raised immediate concern that the two incidents were connected. Law enforcement began to coordinate with state and federal agencies, including the Wisconsin Department of Justice Crime Lab. The severed leg was sent for forensic analysis and DNA testing. In the following days, additional human remains were recovered. On April 4th, 2024, more body parts were found along Lake Michigan, and on April 5th, another set of remains was discovered in Waukegan, Illinois, approximately 60 miles south of Milwaukee. The remains recovered included a human arm, partial torso, and additional tissue. Authorities noted that the scattering of the remains was likely due to water currents, which moved the dismembered parts across the shoreline. Each newly recovered item was log-bagged and sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory and other regional forensic teams for examination. Testing was expedited due to the active nature of the missing person investigation and the public concern following media coverage. By April 8th, DNA results confirmed that the severed leg, along with other recovered remains, belonged to Sade Carlina Robinson. This was officially confirmed by comparing the samples with DNA provided by her biological relatives. The results eliminated any remaining doubt about her fate. Authorities now had two confirmed facts. Sade's car had been intentionally burned near Warnemont Park early on the morning of April 2nd. Human remains found in the same park and nearby areas belonged to Sade Robinson and showed signs of deliberate mutilation and dismemberment. Investigators declared the case a homicide and confirmed that Sade had been killed. While the cause of death had not yet been officially released, the condition of the body and the pattern of dismemberment suggested that the act was not random. In response, law enforcement expanded the crime scene search area, including Anderson's residence, nearby forests, beaches, and garbage disposal sites. Multiple jurisdictions were involved, including Cudahy Police, Milwaukee Police, Waukegan Police, and Illinois state agencies, due to the spread of evidence across state lines. On April 4th, prior to the DNA confirmation becoming public, authorities had already named Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old Milwaukee man, as a person of interest. He was the last known individual to have seen Sade Robinson alive. Cell tower records. Detectives worked quickly to reconstruct Sade's last known movements. She had told friends she was going on a first date with a man named Maxwell Anderson, 33 years old. investigators obtained security footage from Anderson's apartment complex in Milwaukee. The footage showed Sade entering the apartment building around 5:30 p.m. on April 1st, 2024. There was no video of her leaving the premises. This footage placed her at the residence of Anderson, making it her last confirmed location before she went missing. This became a central piece of the case, leading police to seek a search warrant for his apartment. Police used Sade's phone data to track her last known digital activity. Her GPS signal stopped shortly after she arrived at Anderson's address. Investigators also pulled Anderson's phone records and Google location history. His movements, as recorded through his phone, matched the timeline of Sade's disappearance, the vehicle fire, and the disposal of remains along Lake Michigan. Furthermore, Sade's phone stopped transmitting signals while inside Anderson's apartment. Investigators concluded that her phone had either been destroyed or turned off intentionally. The digital trail, consisting of Google Maps data, cell tower pings, and call logs, directly linked Anderson to both the crime scene and Sade's last digital presence. Inside the apartment, physical and digital evidence. Upon execution of the search warrant, investigators entered Anderson's apartment. What they found was described in police reports and court testimony as disturbing and extensive. Photos on Anderson's phone. Police performed a forensic analysis of Anderson's cell phone. Investigators discovered multiple images that were time-stamped on the night of April 1st and early morning of April 2nd. Some photos showed Sade appearing to be unconscious or incapacitated. Other images taken later showed her body in a dismembered state. The timestamps of these photos aligned with the estimated time of death and the period during which the vehicle was set on fire, and the remains were believed to be scattered. These images were used as key evidence in court, confirming that Sade had been in Anderson's apartment and that she was harmed and mutilated there. Bloodstains in the kitchen and bathroom. Crime scene technicians conducted luminol and DNA testing in multiple rooms of the apartment. Blood was found in the kitchen, on the floor, in the sink, and along the walls. More blood traces were located in the bathroom, specifically around the bathtub and on the tiles. The blood samples were tested and identified as belonging to Sade Robinson. The amount and location of the blood suggested a violent altercation and subsequent attempt to clean up evidence. Further investigation led officers to the basement of the property. There, they found a room set up with restraints, chains, and other devices that suggested it had been used for bondage or confinement. This area was described by police and media reports as resembling a sex dungeon. At the time of the search, the area had no direct evidence tying it to Sade. However, its presence reinforced concerns about Anderson's behavior and intentions. Although blood found in the basement did not match Sade's DNA, the setup was noted in the case report and entered into evidence to establish Anderson's psychological profile and capability for violence. Authorities also examined Anderson's internet search history. He had recently searched for topics that included how to get away with murder, how to destroy a body, does fire destroy DNA, how long before police can find a body in water. These searches were dated between March 30th and April 2nd, 2024, directly surrounding the time Sade went missing and her remains were discovered. Investigators used this digital footprint to support the argument that Anderson's actions were premeditated. On April 4th, 2024, just 3 days after Sade Robinson was last seen alive, Maxwell Anderson was arrested by Milwaukee law enforcement officers. The arrest took place following a fast-moving and highly coordinated investigation that connected Anderson directly to the disappearance and death of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The arrest was not random. It was a result of digital tracking, physical evidence, and forensic analysis. Investigators had already reviewed surveillance footage from the night of April 1st. That video showed Sade entering Anderson's apartment building. She never exited. This became a major turning point in the investigation. On April 2nd, Robinson's burned vehicle had been discovered in a park area in Cudahy, Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee. Nearby, a severed human leg washed up on the shoreline of Lake Michigan. Investigators immediately began examining DNA and forensic samples from the remains. Days later, additional remains were found in both Milwaukee and in Waukegan, Illinois. DNA testing confirmed that all the human remains belonged to Sade Robinson. Police obtained a search warrant for Maxwell Anderson's residence. What they found further escalated the case. Blood evidence was discovered in the kitchen, bathroom, and on cleaning tools. Photos were recovered from Anderson's phone, showing Robinson appearing unconscious and later photographs consistent with dismemberment. The contents of his phone also included searches related to body disposal, blood cleanup, and homicide concealment tactics. Some reports also stated the presence of a private basement area containing restraints and items described in police reports as non-standard. Based on the growing list of evidence, both digital and physical, law enforcement acted swiftly. Anderson was arrested at his Milwaukee residence without incident. Following his arrest, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office filed for formal charges against Maxwell Anderson. First-degree intentional homicide. This charge means that Anderson was accused of deliberately and knowingly causing the death of Sade Robinson. In Wisconsin, first-degree intentional homicide is the most serious criminal offense available under state law. It carries a mandatory life sentence upon conviction. Prosecutors allege that Anderson intentionally killed Robinson sometime on April 1st or 2, 2024, during or shortly after their meeting, mutilating a corpse. This charge was based on the condition of Robinson's remains when discovered. The human leg found along the lakeshore was followed by more remains found across different counties. Forensic experts confirmed the dismemberment took place post-mortem. Prosecutors used both photographic evidence and forensic pathology reports to support this charge. This crime is a Class F felony in Wisconsin and is punishable by up to 12.5 years in prison. Hiding a corpse. Anderson was also charged with attempting to conceal the body of Sade Robinson. This charge was added due to the strategic placement of remains in multiple locations, indicating a deliberate attempt to hide the crime. Prosecutors argued that scattering body parts across state lines showed intent to prevent the discovery of the victim's identity and to obstruct the investigation. This is a Class G felony in Wisconsin and can result in up to 10 years in prison. Arson of property other than a building. This final charge stemmed from the discovery of Sade Robinson's car, which had been intentionally set on fire and left in Warnemont Park. The vehicle was found engulfed in flames in the early morning hours of April 2nd. Investigators confirmed through forensic fire analysis that accelerants were used. The fire appeared to be set intentionally to destroy evidence. Arson of non-building property is a Class 1 felony in Wisconsin, carrying a maximum sentence of 3.5 years. Due to the severity of the charges and the violent nature of the crime, prosecutors requested that Anderson be held without bail. The court agreed. During the bail hearing, prosecutors highlighted the calculated nature of the acts, the extensive efforts to conceal the crime, and the suspect's internet history, which included searches related to committing and hiding murder. The judge ruled that Maxwell Anderson posed both a flight risk and a public safety threat. As a result, he was ordered held in custody without the option of pretrial release. Anderson remained in the Milwaukee County Jail while awaiting trial. Over the following year, legal proceedings continued as more forensic data was processed and expert witnesses were prepared for testimony. The case moved forward to a jury trial in mid-2025. Maxwell Anderson's trial in the murder of 19-year-old Sade Robinson began in early June 2025 in Milwaukee County Circuit Court. The case attracted significant public attention due to the disturbing nature of the crime and the amount of evidence collected by law enforcement. The trial lasted between 7 and 8 days. During this period, more than 60 witnesses were called to testify. Witnesses included law enforcement officers, forensic specialists, medical examiners, digital analysts, and individuals who had interactions with either the victim or the defendant around the time of the incident. The prosecution presented physical, digital, and forensic evidence. This included surveillance footage showing Sade Robinson entering Anderson's apartment complex but never leaving. They also introduced images found on Anderson's phone that depicted Robinson in a vulnerable state and later deceased. Bloodstains found throughout Anderson's home and in his car were matched to Robinson through DNA analysis. Cell tower data placed Anderson near the areas where Robinson's dismembered remains were later discovered. Search history from Anderson's electronic devices showed terms related to body disposal and avoiding detection. Testimony from forensic pathologists confirmed the body parts recovered belonged to Sade Robinson. Law enforcement officers testified about the discovery of burned remains of Robinson's vehicle and other items connected to the case. Neighbors of Anderson provided information about noises and smells around the time of the murder. Digital forensic analysts verified timestamps and GPS data linking Anderson to key locations relevant to the case. Anderson's defense team did not dispute that Sade Robinson had been at his residence, but argued there was no direct evidence that he intended to kill her. They claimed the death may have occurred under unknown circumstances and questioned the reliability of certain digital timelines. They also attempted to cast doubt on the state's interpretation of intent and motive. Despite these efforts, the jury remained unconvinced. The jury panel was made up of 9 women and 3 men. After closing arguments were delivered, the jury was dismissed to deliberate. The jury deliberation was notably brief. They spent less than 45 minutes reviewing the case before reaching a unanimous decision. On the final day of the trial, the jury returned to the courtroom and delivered a guilty verdict on all charges. These included first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, hiding a corpse, arson property other than a building. The court recorded Anderson's conviction immediately. He was remanded to custody without bond, awaiting formal sentencing. Wisconsin state law mandates a life sentence for first-degree intentional homicide, meaning that the minimum consequence was already established by statute. Following conviction, the court scheduled Maxwell Anderson's sentencing hearing. Initially, this hearing was set for August 15, 2025. However, on June 18th, court officials filed a notice of rescheduling. The date was moved up by 2 weeks. The final sentencing date was confirmed as August 1st, 2025. The reason given was the scheduling conflict and unavailability of one of the lead prosecutors. At the sentencing hearing, the judge is expected to formally impose a life sentence, as required under Wisconsin law, for first-degree intentional homicide. The law does not permit any lower sentence. However, the judge retains the authority to decide whether Anderson will ever be eligible for parole. If parole is allowed, the court will specify the number of years Anderson must serve before applying for parole review. If parole is denied, Anderson will remain in prison for the rest of his life with no possibility of release. In addition to the homicide charge, Anderson was also convicted of 3 other felonies. The court may choose to apply these sentences consecutively or concurrently. These sentencing decisions will affect the structure and duration of his imprisonment beyond the base life sentence. A separate motion hearing is scheduled for August 15, 2025. At that hearing, Anderson's legal team may request sentence modifications, present mitigation arguments, or raise procedural concerns. The court may also address any remaining pre-sentencing motions related to evidence or trial conduct. Anderson will remain in custody at the Milwaukee County Jail until his transfer to a state correctional facility. The Wisconsin Department of Corrections will determine the specific prison where Anderson will serve his sentence based on security level, housing availability, and risk assessment. The trial and sentencing mark the end of the criminal phase of the case. However, additional civil litigation may follow, including lawsuits filed by the victim's family. Legal proceedings related to wrongful death or negligence involving third parties, such as establishments Anderson visited before the crime, may continue in separate civil court actions. After the confirmation of Sade Robinson's death and the recovery of her remains, her family publicly announced the creation of a non-profit organization named Sade's Voice. The foundation was developed with the aim of raising awareness about violence against Black women and girls in Wisconsin and across the country. The organization intends to serve several purposes: educate young women about personal safety and warning signs of abuse or manipulation, provide resources and support to families of missing or murdered Black individuals, collaborate with law enforcement to promote more efficient responses to missing person reports, particularly in cases involving Black women and girls, advocate for legislative attention and government funding to improve safety measures and response protocols. The foundation was named in memory of Sade Robinson, not only to honor her life, but also to give structure to her family's ongoing efforts to push for justice and accountability beyond the courtroom. The organization has an online presence, fundraising programs, and plans to hold workshops and educational events. It also shares updates about legal proceedings, policy developments, and community initiatives. In addition to criminal justice proceedings, Sade Robinson's family has pursued civil legal action against at least one establishment involved on the night of April 1st, 2024. It was confirmed through investigation and witness testimony that Maxwell Anderson had consumed alcohol at a restaurant or bar prior to allegedly committing the crimes against Sade Robinson. Attorneys representing her family announced that they were planning to file a civil lawsuit against the venues that served Anderson alcohol that evening. The lawsuit is being filed on the basis of negligent service of alcohol to a visibly intoxicated individual, failure to follow responsible serving laws under Wisconsin's liquor liability regulations, contributing to the chain of events that led to Sade Robinson's death. The legal team argues that excessive alcohol consumption may have contributed to Anderson's violent behavior and impaired judgment, and therefore the businesses that enabled that consumption should share some degree of legal and financial accountability. This civil suit is currently ongoing and may include demands for financial compensation and public accountability measures. The outcome may influence how Wisconsin establishments apply training and policies when serving alcohol. Multiple memorials and vigils were held across Milwaukee and surrounding communities following the announcement of Sade's death. These events included candlelight vigils at her workplace and school campus, a public memorial ceremony near Warnemont Park, where her vehicle was discovered, a community walk and gathering to raise awareness about the dangers facing young black women. Organizers used these events to honor the life and memory of Sade Robinson, share safety resources with attendees, build support for legal and policy changes. Public participation included classmates, co-workers, educators, community leaders, and local activists. Many of the events were also attended by individuals who did not personally know Sade, but were moved by the nature of the case. These gatherings helped draw public attention to patterns of violence and gaps in institutional response to missing persons in marginalized communities. Sade Robinson's mother, Sheena Scarborough, became a visible and active figure in public policy discussions in Wisconsin after her daughter's death. She began calling on state lawmakers to establish a formal task force dedicated to addressing the crisis of missing and murdered black women and girls. Her requests included formation of a multidisciplinary task force that includes law enforcement, public health officials, educators, and victim advocates, increased funding for missing persons investigations, mandated protocols for immediate and culturally sensitive response when a person of color is reported missing, mandatory tracking and public reporting on the status of missing black individuals in the state. Scarborough has appeared in local media, attended city council meetings, and written formal appeals to state representatives. Her goal is to institutionalize a response system that treats all missing persons cases with equal urgency, regardless of race or socioeconomic status. The campaign has received support from local advocacy groups and several public officials. As of mid-2025, the proposal for a task force remains under review by Wisconsin legislators. Discussions are ongoing about its potential structure, funding, and enforcement mechanisms. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.